everybody. Happy Monday. And here we are in the second week of January. And we have touched on our shit show border several times in the last couple months, but we haven't dedicated like a full episode to border updates in a while. And there is a lot going on. So we know this is probably going to be another fucked up episode, but let's just dive into this. So, first of all, December of 2023 marked the highest total of illegal border crossings in 1 month ever recorded in history. And it was the first time that migrant encounters surpassed 302,000 people in 1 month. Let me repeat that. 302,000 illegal migrants crossed into the United States in December alone.
I
And
can't
according
even
to
picture 302,000, like how big that is massive. Like, I don't think
yeah,
we realize just how crazy that is.
and that's just 1 month out of the last 2 years, right? So, according to federal data, there hasn't been a single year of encounters under Obama or the Trump administration that even came close to the number of illegal migrants who crossed the border in 2023 alone. Not to mention the more than 229,000 pounds of drugs that federal authorities seized at the border in 2023 alone. And 22,000 pounds of that was fucking fentanyl. So House Republicans continue to push for border control. And they've stated, border security is one of their top priorities in 2024. And they want to resume the process of getting bipartisan agreement to impeach our entirely fucking useless Homeland Security Secretary, Mayorkas. But negotiations continue to drag in the Senate due to asylum policies that they can't agree on. And the elephant in the room, always the negotiation on aid for Ukraine. So House Speaker Mike Johnson continues to send letters and documentation to Biden, urging him to take executive action to address the border issues, restart construction of the border wall. But we all know that's a total fucking waste of time because Biden is the reason that our border is so fucked in the first place. And he has continually cockblocked any attempts by Texas or Arizona to enforce the border. And most recently, last week, the Biden administration filed yet another lawsuit against Texas. Now, Stephanie, you brought this up last Monday when we were talking about new legislation taking effect in 2024. And you mentioned that Governor Abbott's new law, Senate Bill 4, is going to allow Texas state and local law enforcement to arrest illegal migrants starting this March. Well, in response to that legislation, the DOJ filed a lawsuit against Texas last Wednesday, saying that it goes against federal government authority. Now, I want you to listen to the specific language that's used in this lawsuit. It states, quote, Texas cannot run its own immigration system. Its efforts through SB 4 intrude on the federal government's exclusive authority to regulate the entry and removal of non-citizens, frustrates the United States immigration operations and proceedings, and interferes with U.S. foreign relations, end quote. Does that sound like the Biden administration gives a fuck about the migrant crisis? Like,
No, and
fuck
I'm
no,
sorry,
right?
Texas can't run its own immigration system. They basically are. Like, they've had to do that for years now because the federal government won't step up and do what they're supposed to do.
Right. And yet the federal government continues to, every time Texas tries to do something, they file a lawsuit against them. And during a press conference last week, when Biden returned from yet another vacation, this one at his home in St. Croix, he was pushed by reporters on like what's going to be done about the border crisis this year, because this is no longer like a Republican thing. This is a fucking almost every state in America is upset, right? And here was Biden's response. He said, quote, we got to do something. They got to give me the money I need to protect the border, end quote. I can't even say that with a straight face, Stephanie. Like, what the actual fuck? The level of hypocrisy it's just beyond.
Well, yeah, and let's not forget this was the guy who kept campaigning last time on like the buck stops with me, the buck stops here, yet he has not taken accountability for a single thing. like,
Mhm.
and this is all on him. I mean, his administration has given explicit instruction to border agents to basically just allow these people to flow in. And now he's going to try to blame Republicans. And again, like, I am sticking with this. I think that only someone who is compromised would allow this to happen because it's
Yeah.
so blatantly clear that it's going to destroy our country. And I was listening to the Morning Wire podcast, and they said in 2023 there were 3.2 million illegal entries. And they put that like into perspective, saying that it's the equivalent of the populations of Wyoming, Vermont, Delaware, and Rhode Island. That's insane. And that's just 1 year. Like, this is an invasion. And after the Hamas attack, like, I don't know how anyone could continue to allow this to happen, knowing like this is a clear national security risk. And how many of these people hate America and are sleeper cells? And like, at this point, I don't know how Biden and Mayorkas are not seen as traitors to this country, but they continue to get away with it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like last Wednesday, there was a group of around 60 Republicans that were organized by Texas Rep. Tony Gonzalez, and they took a trip to the border near Eagle Pass in Texas. It was the largest group of Congress members to ever visit the border together for like a firsthand look at the chaos and complete fucking shit show disorder that's taking place there. And one of the reps was Dan Muser from Pennsylvania. And after the border visit, he said, quote, "My visit to the southern border today confirmed what we already knew. The situation on the ground is an absolute catastrophe. The Biden administration's open border policies have created a disaster scenario that is endangering American lives and our state's economies. The state of the southern border is worse than it's ever been," end quote. And after this group visit to the border, House Republicans are now threatening to shut down government again by not approving the upcoming budget if their demands for changes to our asylum laws are not met and if renewed construction of the border wall doesn't start. So, of course, Democrats and the Biden administration are furious, and we are only a couple weeks away from yet another possible government shutdown if no agreement is reached. Like, again, right? This is just I'm it's deja vu over and over and over again. And just as a reminder to everyone, there's two sets of appropriation bills that need to be agreed upon for the budget to pass. And the first set of them expires January 19th. So that's like what, about a week away, 2 weeks away. And then the rest of them expire on February 2nd. And it sounds like House Republicans are not going to budge this time, but that's what they always say. And then they do another extension. So who knows? But what was the Biden administration's response to the GOP border visit? In classic KJP style, she blamed everything on Congress, said House Republicans are continuing to obstruct justice, and that instead of finding common ground, they're just doing, quote, political stunts, end quote, by visiting the border, because as we all know, the president is doing everything he can.
Oh, I'm sure he is. And the thing is, like, when Biden's asking for more money, it's not more money to secure the border, it's more money to process people so that more people can come in more efficiently. Like, it's just, it's so ridiculous. And you know what? The Republicans, they're going to do what they always do. They're going to split. They're not going to stick together like the Democrats do. And then the Democrats are going to get what they want. Like, we call it every time, and every time that's how it plays out.
Yeah.
But then you had Biden and Antony Blinken meeting with the president of Mexico, and it's like, once again, failed at negotiating anything. Like, instead, Mexico made the demand saying that they're willing to help with the problem, but first, the US has to improve relations with Venezuela and Cuba. And on top of that, we need to give Mexico more money. And it's so clear that Biden is just weak, and every other country is completely taking advantage of that. And I can't blame them. I mean, that's what happens when you have a weak leader. And you have Mayorkas writing on X, quote, "The regional challenge of migration requires regional solutions, and we appreciate Mexico's commitment to continue its efforts alongside us and with others." So, okay, like, just another word salad that means nothing. I mean, why are they saying that they appreciate Mexico when Mexico is allowing the cartels to have complete control of the border. The cartels are who is running the border, and they're allowing fentanyl to come in and kill American citizens. It's just ridiculous. And the US basically got nothing out of this meeting. And I think it was just, again, like another theater performance. It's all for show to try and make it look like the Biden administration is taking action. And like KJP said, they're, doing everything that they can. Yet they're continuing to allow illegal migrants to cross the border. And even Democrats are starting to become fed up. An article from 9 News states that Denver is going to spend 10% of their total budget on migrants. And they expect it to reach $180 million by 2024. And then, of course, we've talked about it before. You have the Democrat mayors from Chicago, Denver, Houston, Los Angeles, and New York. And they all band together and sent a letter to Biden in November expressing their concerns about the large number of migrants that are entering their cities. And they're demanding funding from the federal government. And it's so funny. Like, again, the hypocrisy, like, it's pretty bad when you have these sanctuary cities that are speaking up. And, you have idiots, though, like Newsom, who are announcing free healthcare for illegal migrants. So it's just encouraging more and more people to come here. The thing's a total shit show. And I don't see any relief in sight.
No, but speaking of liberal states getting fed up, apparently New Jersey is like, fuck this. And they are done with their illegal migrant problem because last week, New Jersey transit cops started ushering groups of migrants onto trains bound for New York. So according to the Post, more than 20 migrant buses landed with, quote, chaperones, and then 1,000 migrants were guided across the river to New York by the cops. And GB News reported that according to the latest data, 23 buses dropped off over 1,000 asylum seekers in New Jersey, and 953 of them were boarded onto trains to Manhattan last Saturday. And then
I would love to know, is Mayor Adams going to flip out on New Jersey the
oh,
same way he
yeah.
did on Texas?
I read something where he was talking about how he needs a minimum of 24 hours warning before they send migrants there. And he's still, complaining as he always does, but yet New York City is still a sanctuary city. So until you fucking get rid of that, you're going to continue to have this problem. And then meanwhile, as our border just continues to be flooded with illegal migrants, many of whom have already been identified as terrorists, I was reading an article in Just the News. They reported last week that Al-Qaeda is openly threatening New York City's energy grid and subway system, as well as airplanes. And they're threatening all this with suicide bombers. So apparently the Arabian Peninsula branch of Al-Qaeda has relaunched its English language magazine called, quote, Inspire. Inspire, yeah. Which I guess this is a magazine that has been around for a while, but it's been dormant since 2017, at least in terms of like being openly shared with the public. And their media arm, which is called El Malahem Media, which almost sounds like mayhem, they published a video late last month that shows a suicide bomber and then a quote, flashes between scenes of busy areas of New York City, an exploding aircraft, the subway system, a person assembling a bomb, and operatives with suicide vests wearing Palestinian kafifes. Did I say that right? Kafife? I think
Sure.
so. Okay. Kafifes, end quote. And then there was another video they issued a few days later that was issuing a call to action to take revenge for what's happening in Gaza. And this video includes instructions for building a concealed bomb for airplanes and lists influential Americans like Bill Gates and Elon Musk as targets. Not that I'm that upset about Bill Gates being a target. But the TSA is saying they're not aware of any credible threats resulting from this video. But like Stephanie, we already know there are terror cells throughout the United States since Biden took office. Almost 300 people. Okay, let me rephrase that. That sounded like one run-on sentence. We know there are terror cells throughout the US, right? And since Biden took office, almost 300 people have been identified as being on the terror watch list that have illegally crossed the southern border. And like, who knows how many more have crossed that we don't know about, right? And experts have been warning that our national security is in danger, especially after this record-breaking number of illegal crossings in December. And it just seems like a terrorist attack is imminent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, how can we not expect that when hundreds of terrorists have already been caught and we don't know how many haven't been caught, that there wouldn't be something crazy happening? I mean, of course there are. And even the Department of Homeland Security is acknowledging it in their report for 2024, saying that the threat of terrorist attacks remains high. And they mention how ISIS and Al Qaeda are trying to rebuild and could target the US. And the report also highlights the 100,000 deaths caused by fentanyl and how it's being added to even prescription pills, causing like unwitting people to die. And so, again, it's like, how is this not already a terrorist attack? I mean, just because it's not a bomb doesn't mean anything. Like they're poisoning 100,000 Americans. It's coming through an open border. Like, why is this not already considered terrorism is my question.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It should be. And then, like, we've talked before about the unprecedented numbers of military age Chinese men coming over the border, right?
Yep.
So last week, the Daily Caller reported that new evidence has been obtained from an unidentified former law enforcement official who requested to remain anonymous for fear of US government retribution, which I'm going to just interpret as fear of ending up on the cabal kill list. But this evidence is in the form of an internal US Customs and Border Patrol email, which indicates that the Biden administration simplified the vetting process for Chinese illegal migrants back in April of 2023. So this email was sent by a Border Patrol supervisor to a master list of 500 Border Patrol agents, and it was instructing them to radically reduce the number of interview questions for Chinese migrants who are apprehended illegally crossing the border. So there were 40 questions apparently beforehand, and now that's been reduced down to just 5 because they were saying that it took around 4 hours per person to interview with the 40 questions. And so we're going to reduce that to save time. So the 5 questions that they ask now are related to military service, university education, what region they come from, employment, and what political party they identify with. And the answers to these questions are supposed to determine whether or not a Chinese illegal migrant poses a national security threat. But according to Border Patrol Supervisor J.J. Carroll, scaling back these interview questions to like fast track releasing Chinese migrants into the US has really just made it more difficult for Border Patrol agents to identify national security threats. And then the former law enforcement official who provided the email, the unidentified guy, he told the Daily Caller that human smuggling operations are highly coordinated and that they, which we already know, and that they just quickly adapted to these new guidelines and just started coaching Chinese illegal immigrants and how to answer the Border Patrol's shorter list of questions so they immediately knew what to say and what not to say because they all apparently had identical stories and just used different streets and different names. And this former government official said that by November of 2023, the backlog of US immigration court cases topped 3 million. 3 million fucking immigration court cases backlog, which is an all-time high. And the Daily Caller article also reported that since 2022, Border Patrol has encountered approximately 35,000 Chinese illegal migrants at the border, according to Border Patrol data between 22 and 23. Border Patrol encounters with Chinese illegal migrants surged over 1,000%, according to government records. Like, it's just fucking crazy.
35,000. I mean, that's like an army. That's like,
Mhm.
I mean, that could take over the United States. That could overthrow a government. Like, this
Right.
is insane. You know, I remember I posted something about it on TikTok a while back, just pointing out all of the military aged men that were coming by themselves from China. And you wouldn't believe, like, so many people were like, oh my gosh, that's so racist. Like, how could you, say that, blah, blah, blah. 35,000 people. Like, they could overthrow the government. So don't give me that nonsense of like, oh, you're being so racist by pointing this out. Like, it has nothing to do with race. This is like a national security threat again. And,
Yeah.
it's in the Department of Homeland Security report. So another part of that report discussed how China will continue transnational repression activity in the homeland, undermining US laws, norms, and individual rights. And the report explicitly states that, quote, terrorists and criminal actors may exploit the elevated flow and complex security environment to enter the United States, end quote. So I love how they just, put these nice words together that basically mean we have a wide open border that they're exploiting.
Yeah.
And the report flat out states that individuals with potential terrorism connections continue to enter the United States. Yet our president is allowing the border to stay open and is letting all these people in. So again, it's like, how is this not treason? Like, literally,
Yeah,
how is this not treason?
it is 100% treasonous. And like, to speak to what you said about comments of people saying that what you posted was racist, every other country in the world has a fucking process for immigration. They don't have fucking open borders. They don't allow floods and floods of fucking millions of people to cross their borders without going through a strict process. The United States is the only country that's in this fucking position.
These people seem to forget that we do have a legal process
Right.
for immigrants. And one of the Republicans in Congress pointed that out. I was listening to an interview this morning, and she said, the Biden administration and the Democrats, they keep focusing on asylum. And she said, well, guess what? If you're an asylum seeker, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the border crossing. You're not going to enter illegally with a coyote like in the desert. You're going to go to the actual border crossing. So clearly, like, these people are not true asylum seekers. They're just taking advantage of these ridiculous policies that Biden put in place.
And I can't fathom how knowing the number of terrorists that have crossed our border already. That was like, what did I say? Like, it was 300 at least known in the last year. How the fuck can any leader in their right mind, which we know the Biden admin's not in their right mind, but how can the people of America accept that? Like, that's fucking criminal. That is fucking treasonous.
Well, yeah,
And
look
yet
at
they're
nine
just continuing
11.
to invite it.
9/11 was just a
Yeah.
handful of terrorists. We're talking
Right.
about hundreds that we know of. I mean,
Mhm.
there's no telling how many we don't know of in those thousands and millions of people that have crossed the border.
Yeah. And then now we have the New York Post also reported that according to US Border Patrol, last week, West African migrants have started using fake passports to pose as unaccompanied minors so that they can get across the border more easily. And I guess this was confirmed because a bunch of blank passports were stolen from the ministry department in Guinea and sold to people looking across the border. And so now hundreds of these people have crossed into the US border through Tucson, Arizona, with fake passports posing as minors. And then just to put icing on the cake, after closing 4 border entry locations in Texas, Arizona, and California due to the unprecedented number of crossings in December, the Biden administration is going to be opening all of those locations this week. And this is under the guise of freeing up Border Patrol personnel. To do what? Like, deal with more unprecedented numbers of migrants who will now be able to illegally cross over the border again? Like, the whole thing is like, I can't even express how disturbing this is. And no matter how much we talk about it, like, I don't think people truly understand the repercussions that this is having on our country.
Well, no, and these numbers, people can't really fathom those numbers. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like we got to put it into terms that people can understand. Like, how many stadiums would that fill? All these migrants that are in here. You know what I mean? Like,
I read something, I think it was saying they could fill like 12 of Yankee Stadium or something like that, which holds, I don't know how many fucking people, but it's huge. And
Yeah.
then, as you mentioned earlier, you took 5 states.
Yeah, imagine driving through 5 states and every
Yeah.
single person in that state is illegally here. Like that is what we're talking about. It's just something that our country has never experienced before. And I don't think we have any idea what the repercussions are going to be. And, my guess is between now and the election, we're going to see more than ever before because they're going to try to get
Mhm.
in before the election in case Trump gets back in or
Mhm.
any Republican and secures the border. So, I mean, there's probably going to be an insane flood in 2024, which is just, it's very worrisome. And again, like we have no idea what the consequences. It's going to, I mean, there's no telling. The damage is already done. And at this
Yeah.
point, it's like, what are they going to do between now and the
Yeah.
election? Nothing.
No, there's nothing, there's it, like you said, the damage has been done, and it's not until we start seeing these acts of terrorism, which are coming, I guarantee you, shit's gonna happen before the elections, and that's when people are suddenly gonna want to close the border. Well, too
Yeah,
little, too fucking late. The border should have never been opened in the first place.
exactly. I agree. Well, that's super unfortunate. And it's just crazy how we keep reporting on this and it keeps getting worse. It's like we get to that point where it's like, how much worse can it get? It can get a lot worse. And it's just, it keeps multiplying. But we'll keep everyone posted because literally every day there's more news on the border. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next time.